apyayantu mamangani vak pranashchakshu shrotramadho balamindriyani chasarvani sarvam brahma upanishadam maham brahma nirakuryam mama brahma nirakarot anirakaranam astvanirakaranam me astu tadatmani nirateya upanishatsu dharmaste mayi santu te mayi santu om shanti shanti shanti. All right, how does a person of unshakable wisdom, this is called a jnani or a jivan mukta. If you hear the difference or if you hear the word jivan mukti, you ask what's the difference between a jivan mukti and a jivan mukta. A jivan mukta is a wise person. The state of freedom of a jivan mukta is called jivan mukti. So jivan mukti is that freedom experienced by the wise person. Okay, so the question now is, how does the person of unshakable wisdom, that is a jivan mukta, sit, speak, and walk? And this is a common question, and we're addressing this, reiterating it from last week, to remove any false notions about what is a wise person, because these ideas can subtract our or cause a hindrance to our assimilation of this knowledge, expecting that this is supposed to be something that represents an image that we have stored or picked up from some point in the spiritual world. So we have to get rid of these images or these fantasies, and we all have them at some point. Okay, now we created a list, and we'll get back to that list of what are these attributes. But we're going to just reread this just to get back into the memory. And it said that Krishna said, or answered to this question, and he said, such people give up desires and fears as they arise in the mind and are happy with themselves alone. So right from the start, Krishna, you can see, did not answer the question directly. Krishna did not say to Arjuna, well, they sit like this, they speak like this, they walk like this, they have children, he didn't say any physical attributes, because the physical attributes, it doesn't matter what a jivan mukta, what their lifestyle is like, in terms of their possessions or in terms of their attitudes or in terms of their behavior, because you can fully have a jivan mukta or a jnani, an enlightened person, who is married and has kids. In fact, this was very normal in the Vedic world, where the son would, as a certain samskara, a certain point of life, would get initiated into the Vedic knowledge by the father, because the father knew or had self-knowledge, and the son would get initiated by the father. That means the father would be the guru. You see, so we're not speaking about a particular what car is driven or what house or where is that. It's got nothing to do with it, especially today where the lifestyle is just not what we used to have. It's just, modern. So things have changed. So this question applies more than ever. And he also says they are happy with themselves alone. And you can imagine or think about now why, considering we have discussed about the one who knows who they are and who they are not. What does that mean? It means they're consistently, that is, you could say rejecting, even though that's not a proper means to say it, at least initially, rejecting all of the ideas about who they are not. Why? Why would someone be rejecting who I am not? Why would a wise person be rejecting an experience of sensual gratification, for example? Two parts. First of all, they know that that sensual gratification is not going to last, that means it's subject to the arrival and departure. And that means when it arrives, it's so happy. When it departs, that's when, we sort of we miss it. So it causes a little spark in the mind. And series of these sparks cause one to just to be disappointed. So it's not out of a denial, it's simply out of an understanding that everything is subject to arrival and departure. And the second reason is because they're happy with themselves alone is because, as I said last week, when we stop externalizing our minds to the outwards, which is what most of us are trained to do, and we start to turn our minds inwards and ask or inquire, who is it, because of whom is this experience, for example, now known for what it is? It's because of me. And who am I? Well, I am that who is aware of this. And who is that is aware of this? That ever silent presence, unverbalized, unspoken, uncommunicated, that is always prior to whatever experience, including the sense of I. Even when I say I am, there's even a knower prior to the I am. That's why you know when you say I am. How do you know that you said I am? How do you know that you are? How do you know that you exist? You know that you exist because you are existence. And that existence cannot be objectified. You cannot touch your existence because you are existence. So this is an example of inquiring in correlation to the experience that is presented to us. So these two reasons are, for now, why they are happy. There's a lot more reasons, but for now, why they are happy. So that means that when the mind stops drawing or going outwards, it turns inwards, back onto itself. And what do we say? Sarvam Brahmaha, everything is the self. That means it turns back to that one because of whom that experience has been known or is known for what it is. That means it turns back on the subject, on you. And that means Sarvam Brahmaha is what? The total. And the total is what? Ananda. It's limitless. It's that from which joy comes from. It's that from which all happiness is originated from. So that means that the mind goes back to that one, the source of joy. So that means that from now on, the object of attention goes from outwards to inwards, and it starts to draw the infinite joy from the self. So that's the difference between a samsari and a jivan mukta. Is that clear? All right. So they don't hanker for pleasure and are unaffected by adversity, nor do they become elated when their desires are satisfied or depressed when they aren't. Once again, this supports the last point. They aren't elated even if something which you could say happens of a good, a pleasing nature, because they also know even that is subject to departure and arrival, right? And even that's going to end. Did you ever notice, by the way, the millionaires who won the lotto? They all, they celebrate on the equal level as much as they celebrated when they won the money. That is, when they lose, they have an equal intensity of loss, of unhappiness, as they had the intensity of happiness when they gained that money. See, the forces always balancing themselves. So a wise person doesn't let that out of the understanding happen, knowing that for every joy there's an equal and opposite departure. So they remain neutral. Or they can also remain joyful, but it's not attached joy. Okay, when confronted with sense objects, they're able to withdraw their limbs like a turtle. Supports the topic, that is, when a pleasing experience occurs, one that would usually cause one to put all of their attention into it passionately. What happens is automatically, it's like the turtle. When you come near a turtle, it just automatically goes inwards, back to itself, where all joy resides. All right. for someone who doesn't feed the senses come back to the self, leaving the longing behind. It's just another analogy is to say every time you externalize your attention outwards to whatever it is, it's almost like watering a plant, giving it a little bit more water. And what happens then? The plant grows bigger and bigger and bigger. And every time it grows bigger, it requires more water next time in order to sustain itself. So when we draw attention inwards, it's like refusing to water the plant of desire. So it eventually withers away, it dies. So this is an attribute of a wise person. Okay, when the self is known, the longing goes away. The senses can even take the mind away from the self for even a wise person. Is that news? Called the fallen yogi syndrome. It's very rare, but it does happen because the senses are, see, just the nature of the world is that the mind likes to attract itself to an experience, to a sense gratifying object. So do the senses. See, the physical also has a personality. Sometimes it just needs to hug or touch. And the mind needs something to get stimulated and needs to play a game or something that's entertaining. So that sometimes can, even after self-knowledge, if one just says, well, that's it, I've got it, there's nothing more to know, I'm awareness, I'm consciousness, that's it, everything else is mithya, go home, now I can celebrate. That can be a big mistake, actually, because as soon as that happens, the world still continues like it always did. And we know how attractive the world is. You see? So we're not saying deny the world, just that to be very intelligent about, is this really going to produce a helpful, a peaceful, a tranquil, serene mind, or is this going to cause a mind that's going to want to re-experience the same experience all over again? Okay, so it takes away the mind from one who even sees clearly. That's why we have the third stage called nididhyasanam, which we will get to what it means. It's the lifelong contemplation. Controlling the senses and endowed with discrimination, two parts. Controlling the senses and discriminating satya mithya, self from not self. Keep your mind on me, capital M-E. This is direct statement from the Gita. Why does Krishna call himself me? Did you notice that? It's always just me. In the scriptures, they will speak like, what, me? Are you talking Krishna, or what are you talking about when you say me?
Speaking of the self.
Yeah, the self. See, when people see this is the other side, the Advaitas. When they say me, they think that me is referring to Krishna. So they end up adoring Krishna as some deity in the heavens. Same thing happens in Christianity. Is when Jesus says, I am the Son of God, then the people will say, well, it's Jesus to worship. But Jesus is referring to the Son, who you are also, of God, of Ishvara. So Jesus is speaking as you. Krishna is speaking as you. So that's why Krishna is saying here, keep your mind on yourself. Keep your mind on me, because you are the self. And self-knowledge will firm up in your mind. Now, one of the things that we can do is, just a very simple affirmation, is when a temptation arises or something that would otherwise imply that I'm not whole and complete, is just to say, I'm complete, I'm whole, I'm already full. Because the mind wants to, bind or associate with an experience because it believes it is partial, it is empty. So something that we can simply do is say, okay, this is the mind and it wants to connect naturally. That's what a mind does. It always wants to connect with an experience, but I'm already whole and complete. So it's reminding yourself who you already are. Very beautiful short sentence. Okay, now, process of desire. So now let's investigate what happens when desire arises. Which we're not saying is a problem, only if it's misunderstood and misused. So now let's see how to use desire when understood properly. When you fancy objects, you become attached to them and soon desire them. Isn't that our experience? We first begin to take notice of that, and then we start to have thoughts about that, and those thoughts begin to get entertained more often, and what started off as a haphazard sort of entertainment or noticing now turned into a consistent sadhana, a consistent practice of entertaining desires about that object. We do this all the time when we think of a holiday. We want to go somewhere. What do? We start to kind of speak about it, don't we? Huh? I'm thinking of going to India. I'm thinking of going to Hawaii. I'm thinking, and then the conversation sort of, supports that, and then you start to, add more ideas, and then you start to think about it more often at home. And then you find yourself booking a ticket, and then the whole show gets laid out. It all started with a simple desire. When you fancy objects, a holiday, self-knowledge, whatever it is, you become attached to them and soon desire them. Why do we become attached? Because the pleasing thoughts that we create about whatever it is so addictive because we made that. See, whatever we create, it's very attractive. That's why the marketers will, instead of trying to tell you what you should buy, they will entertain an idea of what's it like when you have this product. So you start to imagine yourself, what's it like to have this product? And then you end up selling yourself. Happens all the time. All right, so in other words, they're taking advantage of the natural psychology of a human being. When you desire something, so this is what happens now after we desire. When you desire something, anger inevitably comes. So, fancy objects become attached, desire. Desire, anger, followed by delusion. So now, let's see what anger is. Okay. Now, if you feel angry towards an object or desire, then know that delusion is also coming. So now, why do we feel angry towards an object? What is it when somebody obstructs us? When a potential person comes up and stops me from potentially having what it is that I want, why do I get angry? That means even potentially obstructing a desire causes anger. Never mind actually obstructing it, but even potentially obstructing it, already anger comes. Okay, so now let's read a little bit more about anger, and I'm going to go back to the reference guide, Holy Gita, to see what is anger. When an object has charmed or caught your attention, has charmed one to a point of deep attachment, and when fear of its loss has started coming up in waves to disturb the individual, then such an individual's attitude towards those that come between him and the object of his attachment is called anger. Anger is thus nothing but a feeling that arises in us towards an obstacle between ourselves and object of our attachment. The anger thus arising within is directly proportional to the amount of fear one entertains by themselves on the score of the obstacle holding one back from winning one's object of love. Anger, therefore, is only attachment. Raga dvesha. Raga is desire. Anger, therefore, is our attachment for an object expressed at an obstacle that has come between us and the object of desire. So that means that, anger can, when we think of anger, don't think of anger just as lashing out. Anger can come as frustration, it can come as anxiety, or as fear. So that means what is fear, what is frustration, what is anxiety, what other expressions of anger do we have? Sorrow, sadness, all of that you could put under the category of anger. So that means whenever these emotions are felt, it's because there is a certain attachment to how I wish for that to be according to my raga, to my desires. And if that does not turn out the way that I have imagined, then automatically anger arises out of that.
Technically, jealousy.
Yeah, especially.
You get frustrated when you see others having what, you
Yeah,
know.
because they're standing in my way of getting what I want, and so I want to destroy them. So that's what Duryodhana also wanted to destroy Arjuna, because even after expelling the Pandavas for 13 years, Duryodhana tried to find the Pandavas and actually destroy them, because he couldn't stand them. Even if he gotten everything that he wanted, you know, the Indraprastha, the kingdom, everything he got, he still, because he was jealous about them, so he wants to destroy them. Because why? They're standing in my way of my happiness. Because I imagine that if that object gets destroyed, I will be happy. It may not be the case, but it doesn't matter, because I imagined it. So for me, it's real. Okay, so what is anger in summary? Anger in summary is the hindrance or the obstacle standing between the one that is desiring and that which is desired. Even entertaining not getting something, even that is enough to cause, you know, some sort of feelings of sadness, just kind of unpleasant feeling. So what's the point of this? The point of this is we started right from fancying objects. So we're telling you now, don't fancy objects? No, we're not. You can still fancy objects, just be very intelligent, because there's a danger of becoming attached to the object, knowing that it's subject to arrival and departure. So arrival, departure should become a standard, ideally a standard understanding about life. Even your own body is subject to arrival and departure. So there's nothing we can do about it, only just simply accept it as the way of life. One thing has to die to give birth to another tree. One tree dies, a new tree is born. One culture dies, a new culture is born. That's just the way of life that has to be accepted and embraced. So, fancying objects leads to anger, and anger ends up, as we all know, creating or taking away your buddhi. That is your ability to discriminate what is the best course of action in order to deal with this in the most appropriate way that is conducive for both my health and their well-being. That buddhi goes away when there's anger. Because all that happens in anger is just the attempt to attain the object. That's all there is in anger mode, whether it's frustration or jealousy or whatever it is. But that removes the fundamental capacity that all human beings are endowed with, and that is your tikshna buddhi and your sukshma buddhi, your ability to discern whether it's gross objects or subtle objects, whether is it what should I do about this situation in the world, or what is real here? You know, what is real here? I'm real. What is changing? The situation is changing. That's called tikshma buddhi. So both sukshma, gross intellect, and tikshma buddhi, subtle intellect, that goes in anger. All starting by fancying objects. That's why we said at the beginning, they are able to withdraw their limbs like a turtle every time. When you are deluded, you can't... okay, so now, after delusion, what happens next, right? When we are deluded as a result of anger, you can't remember your purpose in life. The mind becomes incapacitated, and you are as good as just not functional, not effective in the situation. So now just imagine, for example, being in a place, in a life situation that unnecessarily causes a series of angers. Not necessarily all the time, but just a series of angers here and there and there and there. What that does is it's enough to take the mind away from the life purpose. Because see, anger is not just anger. Anger leaves traces, doesn't it? It leaves a tail. And there's a thought about what has happened, at least for a week sometimes. People don't talk to themselves, right? So that means that one has to create a situation that is conducive to both their swadharma, that is what is the most appropriate situation for them, and also conducive for the other's swadharma. Is it also appropriate for them? So those two have to match. Otherwise, if there's a mismatch, then it creates unnecessary anger, it takes away discrimination, discrimination induces delusion, delusion takes away the ability to contemplate my life purpose, and then say goodbye to the shastras, to the scriptures. Yeah, so what we're saying here is it's really helps to create a harmonious lifestyle, in summary. Whereas a sense-controlled person, a jivan mukta, whose likes and dislikes are rendered non-binding by karma yoga, attains tranquility and moves freely amongst objects. What does non-binding samskaras or vasanas mean? Whereas a sense-controlled person whose likes and dislikes are rendered non-binding. So now we have a difference between binding and non-binding. What is a binding tendency? A binding tendency, a binding, what does it say here? A binding a binding tendency is I have to. There's no other way, I have to. What does that cause? Anger. Because that's an attachment, isn't it? An attachment causes anger, or anger causes delusion, and so on. So binding tendencies, that means I have to, I must, I should. That is what causes the problem. Non-binding tendencies is I can, but I don't have to. I can do this, it will be helpful to do this, but I don't have to. I have to go, but I don't have to. Why? Because I'm always taken care of. First of all, it's not yours. You didn't put those tendencies in your mind, did you? No, we grow up in an environment innocently exposed to the media, television, people around us, and we get implanted these tendencies, and then we protect them our whole life. No. So non-binding vasanas, exhausted by karma yoga, releases one from suffering, which is why they're able to move freely among objects. What does it mean to say move freely among objects?
Not be attached.
Yeah. And objects, see, we're always confronted by objects, aren't we? Everywhere there's objects. There's objects of the mind, there's objects of emotions, there's objects of friends, there's objects of work colleagues. We're always confronted by objects. And here it says move freely among objects. What does that mean? That means, it doesn't mean that we're distancing ourselves away. We're still amidst the same objects. It's just that our tendencies have been rendered non-binding by karma yoga, and two, by understanding that everything's subject to arrival and departure. And also last week we talked about you sometimes get exactly what you want, sometimes get more what you want, sometimes less, and sometimes opposite. So all of these variables are there as a natural expression of life, and it's not reasonable to put guarantee as to how things are to work out. Because who am I, who are you to expect or want things to work out the way they should? What does that say? It's just what? It's just total isolation. It's my likes are right and everyone else's dislikes are wrong, so things should work out according to my likes. Like, where's the logic there? Yeah. So rendering vasanas non-binding releases one from this cycle of anger and delusion and lack of discrimination. Okay, so suffering disappears from a tranquil mind, and self-knowledge is easily established there. Remember what I talked about the mind being like a metaphor of the lake? So that means when the vasanas, when the samskaras are rendered non-binding, that means I no longer have to, then there's no reason to disturb the mind, because the expectations are understood to be arriving and departing all the time. So it's fine. If I don't get what I want, it's fine. It's for the better anyway. I don't know what's better for me, so I'm just going to let Ishvara deliver to me what is what is best. Or the other way to say it is, it doesn't have to work out the way I want it, because it's just subject to my own likes and dislikes. Yeah. It's not necessarily Ishvara is going to deliver, because Ishvara is not a person in the sky who is controlling things. It doesn't work like that. What I meant was Ishvara is just a facilitator of your actions. That means if you choose something, Ishvara is obligated to deliver that result. So that means it's all up to you. But at the same time, we know that our likes and dislikes can get in the way. So knowing that, it doesn't have to work out the way that we want it. Okay, a disturbed mind is incapable of knowledge, and without knowledge, how can one contemplate on the self? Without contemplation, peace is elusive, and without peace, how can you expect happiness? So anger, delusion, discrimination, suffering, disturbed mind, incapable of knowledge, producing a lack of contemplation, and with a lack of contemplation, peace becomes elusive. And without peace, how can you expect happiness? A mind enslaved in the senses is pushed hither and thither, back and forth, in the ocean of samsara, just as a strong wind carries a small boat across the water. And we have a very nice analogy of this is, imagine a jiva, a person, like in a boat. And we have two boats, boat A and boat B. Boat A is guided by the shastras, by the scriptures. The boat A, the equivalent would be having a rudder, because those scriptures point the boat onto the shore. Whereas the boat B doesn't have the shastra, the scripture, which is like taking away the rudder. So it doesn't mean that the boat's going to sink, it just means that the boat is going to have a much harder time arriving at the shore. Because not only does the boat not have a proper guidance system, but it also doesn't know how to operate the boat. So that's the beauty of the Shastras. Not only does it tell us how to operate our minds, how to conduct ourselves in the world, but also in what way to live our lives. You see, so there's a great benefit in engaging ourselves or reading the Bhagavad Gita every day, or a certain Puranas or some kind of text, because they always guide our minds. Okay. Steady knowledge only happens in a steady mind. A wise person is like an owl. This is a very interesting statement. A wise person is like an owl, awake while the world sleeps, and asleep when the world is awake. What does this mean? A wise person is like an owl, and an owl does what? During daytime, an owl sleeps. And during nighttime, the owl is awake. Okay, the way to understand this is, what happens when a unwise and a samsari, what happens when a samsari sleeps at night? Deep sleep, not dreams, deep sleep. Bliss. Non-dual bliss. There's nothing. There's no mind going outwards, is there? It's just total inwards. It's just here. Bliss. They don't know about it, nevertheless, but it's just lack of objects. The mind is not going outwards, everything's inwards. A samsari is asleep to that bliss, to that non-dual awareness. But an owl is awake to that. That's why it says here, an owl is awake at night. Therefore, an owl knows about that non-dual reality of the self, which the samsaris are asleep to. So that means, I'm going to read it once again, just for further understanding. So a wise owl is awake while the world sleeps. World sleeps to the no outward thought. That means the mind's not going outwards. That means total inward bliss of non-dual self. A wise person is awake to this bliss. And then it says, an owl is asleep when the world is awake. Why does it say that? Why is the owl asleep while the world is... When is the world awake? During daytime. What happens in daytime? All of the senses go outwards. Out, out, out. A wise person is asleep to that. So that means what? To a wise person, there is nothing but the bliss of self, the self. But a samsari is only awake to the daytime, the mind going outwards, but asleep to night, which the wise person is awake to. That's what the statement means. So the world is awake to senses, externalizing mind outwards, neglecting the self. A wise person is asleep to this externalization. Hence, to wise person, there is only the self. It was just so many interpretations I put, just to make sure. Okay, now one little point here is it says, a wise person is asleep to this externalization. It sounds like a wise person doesn't experience. We're not saying that. It's just that, as we said from the beginning, when confronted with sense objects, they're able to withdraw their limbs like a turtle. Despite experiences occurring, it is now not, there's no attachment to those experiences. But they still do occur. Because why? The mind is being trained to look back onto itself. Because of whom is this experience known? Inquiry mode. All right. His or her mind is unaffected by desires flowing into it. Just as the ocean is unchanged by the many rivers that flow into it. When your binding desires have been rendered non-binding, your sense of I and mine disappear. And like waves merge into the ocean, your mind merges into the self. Your belief in smallness and separateness dissolve, and you become permanently satisfied. Okay, several points here. When your binding desires have been rendered non-binding, so what does binding desires mean? They're mine. That's what we do. When there's a binding desire, it's mine. So I choose to protect it. So the I gets formed. There's an entity, there's a door the ego, there's somebody doing the protection. So that means when there is a binding vasana, automatically there has to be somebody who is trying to own it, trying to fulfill it. And that somebody gets created as the ego. So that means the binding vasana holds the ego. You see the connection? As long as there's a binding vasana, I have to get that. Who's that I that has to get that? The ego. But when that which I have to get has been rendered non-binding, then what use then why do you need the I? Who's there to need anything when there's nothing to need? When all the vasana has been neutralized, then who is there left to go? I want to fulfill something. I want to get something. I want to feel something. That's why it says your sense of I and mine disappears. Is that clear? Or we need more explanation on that? Okay.
I'm just thinking, if a Vedanta gets into this and understands at a deep level about desire,
yeah,
and understands that deep sleep is just basically some kind of state that parallels or similar to in moksha.
No, not at all. Actually, no. It's just a metaphor.
Okay.
We call deep sleep two-thirds enlightened because it's a good pointer. It's a good analogy because in deep sleep there's no objects. But and so there's bliss. That's why we say, that's why we like to sleep. We don't go to bed to dream. We go to bed to sleep. If there was nothing but a dream, we'd probably, oh my God, I got a dream again. We don't do that. We go specifically to sleep because we know in sleep there's nothing. That's why the body is able to regenerate so fast because it's not subject to entertaining thoughts or processing thoughts. Or desires, yeah. But tendencies from the causal body, the body that causes those tendencies. So the answer is, but the person doesn't know about that lack of objects. So in the waking state, the person knows about, is aware, but the problem in the waking state is there are objects. You see? So here we have objects, but we're totally aware, but in deep sleep there's no objects, but we're not aware of that. Okay, so now how do we tie in this with your question, that is, what is moksha and how does that relate to deep sleep? Moksha is neither. Moksha is neither the deep sleep, the waking state, nor the dream state. It's the simple awareness of the deep sleep, the waking state, and the dream state. Because see, the three states, they have their own worlds, don't they? This world, this waking world right now, has its own, there's a character called Gareth. And there's a world. And then there is a world tonight, which is going to be created called a dream. That's going to be another world. And then there's going to be a no world called deep sleep. But those three states are what? They're still known by you. So that means no matter what happens in those three states, okay? No matter what happens in this world, or in the dream world, or in the deep sleep, whatever that is, it's irrelevant. Because who's the one that knows about those three states? Yeah, you do. So see how the answer is molding? So the answer is, moksha has nothing to do with a state, because deep sleep is another state. It's a state of absence of thoughts. Absence of thoughts, who knows that there's absence of thoughts? You do. Moksha has nothing to do with the dream, because it's another state, it's another world. Who knows about the dream? You do. This world, certainly, there's a whole bunch of experiences in this world. Who knows about the experiences? You do. See, always come back to you.
So at some point in deep sleep, we must be able to acknowledge. It's when we wake up that we acknowledge we're in deep sleep, but
yeah,
not while we're in sleep.
No, because Ishvara creates these three entities. A waking state entity, right now, Garrett, this is generated by Ishvara. There's a dream Gareth, and there's a deep sleep Gareth. Except the Gareth in deep sleep doesn't know about himself. So these three jivas are created by Ishvara. And they all have their own worlds. They all have their own, you could call it state. They have their own mechanics, their own laws, their own colors, their own, just ways of being. But because of whom are those three states known that they exist? Because of you, because you know about them. So once again, it doesn't matter what the content is. Moksha simply means I am the awareness of the content and staying in that awareness, not putting my attention and trying to analyze the content, because the content is generated by Ishvara Srishti, that is the intelligence of the Lord. Another way to explain this is, can you think about God? Yeah, we talk about God all the time. Can you think about yourself as a person? All the time. We speak about ourselves, our health, our minds, our thoughts, and we talk about the Lord like all the time. So that means what? You can even objectify the Lord. You can objectify your body, your mind certainly, but you can also objectify Bhagavan, Ishvara. But you cannot objectify yourself. So what does that mean? Moksha is the understanding that I am that which cannot be objectified because I am that already. I cannot objectify myself. But anything else which I can objectify, including Ishvara and the Jiva, that is called Anatma, not self. So moksha is staying in that one which you cannot objectify. It's called the silent, the silence. But it's not silence that is opposed to sound. It's the silence which knows about sound and lack of sound. You see? So how do you know that there's sound? Because there's silence. How do you know that there's silence? Because there is that ever-present, ever-witnessing silence in the background called Atman, you. So moksha is simply understanding I am that silence, that unverbalized, uncommunicated silence, because of which both silence, no thought, that is, deep sleep, and thought, that is this waking world, are known. Okay, when your binding desires have been rendered non-binding, your sense of I and mind disappears, and like waves merge into the ocean, your mind merges into the self. Your belief in smallness, separateness dissolve. Why? Why does it dissolve? Because take the analogy of the wave. Before, the wave thought it was separate from the ocean and the other waves. So when a small wave, sees an even smaller wave, then the wave feels glorious. But as soon as it turns its head and sees a bigger wave, then it feels small. But if a wave called a jivan mukta, a wise person, knows that, hey, the waves look different, everything looks different, the world looks different, we all look different, we get it. Our thoughts are different, our ways of communicating, it's all different. But like a wave, a jivan mukta knows that every other wave is of the one same source, H2O, in this consciousness, which I am not separate of. Because if there is only ocean, then what is there other than the ocean? You see, it's different, it looks different. It looks different in the form of a waking state, it looks different in the form of a dream state, and it looks different in the form of a deep sleep state, but even those three states are pervaded by H2O, you. That's why you know about your three states. That's why you can say, I had yesterday, I dreamt yesterday, and I had deep sleep yesterday. I was alive 1 year ago, I had a dream 1 year ago, and I had deep sleep 1 year ago. I was alive 30 years ago. I had dreams 30 years ago, a lot more clear than today, lucid dreams and all that. You all remember when you were small, you had very clear dreams. And I had sleep 30 years ago. 30 years later, you know about every single time you've slept, you dreamt, and you were conscious. So that means what? That which pervades every state, the waking state, the dream state, and the deep sleep state, that one, that's you. That's why you know about every state, all the time. We call that, when we get to the Mandukya Upanishad, we call that Turiya. Turiya means, in Sanskrit, means four. This means the fourth principle which pervades the first three states. Not the fourth state, Gareth, not the fourth state, because, moksha is not a state. It's the fourth principle which pervades the three states. Okay, now we have one problem here, and it's called viparita bhavana. So even after permanently satisfied, the problem called memory comes in. Because even after gaining self-knowledge, Brahma Vidya, what happens is memories are still running the person from the unconscious. The causal body is still there. It's still sending out the same memories, the same tendencies, the same lack of love issues, unresolved. They're all there. Nothing changes. So they prevent the fruit of this knowledge. So that means even after gaining self-knowledge, it's not like everything changes. Everything is beautiful and everything is fine. No, life is exactly the same. Because if we say that life is different, that would be what? A problem. Because I would be addressing another existence. That would be a dualistic notion if I said everything's different. That's why nothing changes. Because what is one thing which you have known about from the beginning? More than anything else. Despite people coming and going in your life.
That we exist.
Huh?
That we exist.
Yeah. About you. Being known yourself. I. That's why as I said at the beginning, I was there as a baby. I was there as a teenager. I'm always there. But what has changed? So many things. So that one which never changes, that's you. And the definition of existence of Brahman is never changing. Therefore, you are Brahman. Yes, you can say my experience has changed, totally understand that. My life has changed, totally fine. My thoughts have changed, totally. My body has changed, totally fine. But I haven't changed. If I were changed, then how would I know one point of change onto the next? How would that be possible? Because the previous change would be affecting me, and I wouldn't be able to distinguish the previous change by the time I get onto a new form of change. You see, so that means there has to be a factor, a substratum, that is always unaffected by the endless changes of the mind and the body and our lives. You see the logic there? Yeah. Okay, summary, verses 54 to 72. The fruit of self-knowledge, moksha. The fruit. You are satisfied with your life because you are full. Satisfied with the world, satisfied with the ego, satisfied with even those parts that we're not happy about. That's a surprise. Because here we said viparita bhavana is it can prevent our fruits of enjoyment, or the full actualization, the depth of I am Brahman. That's what these memories unconscious can create, this problem. But now we're saying they're satisfied with their life completely, even about those parts which are not, they're just still unpleasing. So now how do we reconcile this? So the way to is to simply say that, as I said before, nothing changes. So that means that even after self-knowledge, there's still a person walking earth. The person still has tendencies. Why wouldn't I want to address those tendencies? The only difference is now those tendencies are non-binding vasanas. It's not I have to, because what do we say at the beginning? If there's a binding vasana, it creates anger. Now it's I can, but I don't have to. Because it's fine, it's not yours. You didn't create your tendencies. You didn't create these weird behavioral patterns that we're not, that some of us are not happy about. It's not yours. It doesn't mean that we just put them away. We can address them if we want, but it doesn't bother us whether we address them or not, because it's like trying to address somebody else. Like, do you ever try to fix somebody else's problem? Do you even care? Like a stranger's problem? No. So then, if you're neither that stranger nor your body and your mind, then why are we trying to fix our own body and minds? What does that presuppose? It presupposes that I am this body and mind, but I am not that body and mind. So that's why it says you're satisfied with your life because you are full. That means I'm neither this person nor that person. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to leave, this person to run its tendencies, bad tendencies or negative tendencies. I can still address them if I want. So nothing changes. You experience deep peace in spite of negative situations. Deep peace in spite of negative situations, like a phone breaking down. Okay, so let's not try to fantasize or imagine what this means, because the mind has a tendency to go, oh, okay, so there's a jivan mukta, and my house burns down, and they're just totally okay. Okay. There's an underlining contentment, because in the beginning we said when confronted with sense objects, like the sense object of the house burning down, they are able to withdraw their limbs like a turtle. Why? Because of the consistent sadhana and the love of self, which is everything. So now how does a particular object have any attachment if I have rendered my attachments non-binding through karma yoga? So yes, there is it's unfortunate, but so what? It doesn't touch me. So it's a yes and a no. It does sort of affect, but it doesn't affect at all. That's the point. Okay, equanimity. Remember the yoga? Shruti vipratipanate yada sthasyati nischala samatha vachala buddhis tada yogam avapsyasi 253. So, and it says, when we are confounded, perplexed, bedazzled, even by the scriptures, we remain completely equanimous, unmoved, unshaken by the knowledge of the scriptures. Even the knowledge of the scriptures doesn't move me. When I say me, I mean the jivan, the one that has self-knowledge. Because there is nothing more to know after just knowing that I am the whole. So then what more is a scripture saying you're the whole going to do? That's what we mean. When you know who you are, that's it. There's nothing more to know. Even though the scriptures still get read because it's just so beautiful to read them. Okay, just as an owl, oh, here we go, back to the owl again. Just as an owl is asleep to the day, samsaris are asleep to the self, and just as a human beings are asleep in the night, the wise person is asleep to samsara. So the last sentence, the wise person is asleep to samsara, it simply means that there is no samsara for a wise person. It's a nice metaphor. We're not saying they're ignorant to samsara. It's just that there's no samsara, because everything is consciousness. Everything is H2O. So that means an ignorant, a samsari, will look at another person as, a particular label, like they're less than knowledgeable, they're like this, they're like that. But a jivan mukta looks at everyone as themselves. So there is no ignorance for a Jivan Mukta. There is no such thing as that's an ignorant person. There's a context where we use ignorant person, but there is no such thing as an ignorant person. Why? Because it all comes from your understanding. And understanding comes from your knowledge. That means what you know, your attitude changes, your vision changes, and so does the whole world change. So that means there is no unenlightened people here. There is only unenlightened people here from the point of view of someone without the knowledge of what we're talking about. But from the point of view that everything is me, everything is consciousness, what is there to label? When everything is the H2O, how can you call it one label, deep sleep, dream, waking, when it's all pervaded by the same H2O? Yeah. The wise person, he is like an ocean, always full. He is free, she is free in life and after death. She is free in life and after death. Okay, why are they free in life? Because why are they free in life? Why is a Jivan Mukta or a Jnani free in life? Yeah, unattached to things that would otherwise cause them to have passionate desires and propulsions and a bunch of action steps to attain that. Because it actually hurts to try to get something and to work the whole life just to try to get something. It's painful because we don't ever know how it's going to work out. So they're free in life also because they've fulfilled the highest purpose there is for a human being, which is moksha. That means they're okay with artha, security, kama, pleasure, and dharma. That means morals and virtues. They're okay, but they don't have to. They don't have to pursue artha, kama, and dharma. They can, but they don't have to. A samsari pursues only artha, kama, and dharma. Wise people, very wise. That's the highest you can get in the dharma. You also have people who constantly engage in entertainment and pleasures of life, luxuries, good foods, good cuisines, good holidays. That's the priority is kama. And you have those who are very obsessed with family, stability, wealth, just security, family security. That's artha. Moksha is I am okay with artha, dharma, and kama, but I don't have to pursue it. Why? Because I've already pursued it. This is how a Jivan Mukta would speak. That's why there's no skipping. Because we cannot skip right from artha straight into moksha. You know why? Because then that one is going to think about kama. What's it? The good things about life. What about those things? So it's going to distract them. That's why we have to come to a certain point where we recognize, yes, artha is great, security is great. We all love security. We need security as a human being. Kama, luxuries, food, relationships, all of that is completely fine. Nothing wrong, nothing right. It's just neutral. Depends on what you want, your free will. And dharma, virtue, morals and virtue. That's completely fine, but I am ready to go into the final stage called moksha. So they are free in life thus because they have fulfilled the highest purpose. And after death, because there is nobody left to say this is my doing. That means the karma is neutralized. See, for a samsari, when something happens, they think I did that. So now I have to address that. And that happened to me. Because action is always happening, right, in the world. There's nothing never not happening. There's always something happening. So, as samsari would say, what's happening to me, now I have to go address that, and I go address that, and then something happens, and then I have to go address that. It's just an endless thread of pursuing problems and, offering solutions. But karma for a Jivan Mukti gets neutralized because there is knowledge that despite actions being done and coming back, those actions are not happening to me, they're happening to this body, mind, intellect. They're mithya, they're in a mithya world. See the difference? So a wise person is free after that. There's no need to be reborn again, because why do you have a body? Think about it. What is the only reason you have a body for? To fulfill desires. That's it. We want what? Even moksha. That's another desire. We need a body for that. Security. We need a body to fulfill that security. Pleasure. We need a body. We need the five senses, organs of knowledge, to experience the world. Security. We need an intellect. The enjoyment of security and the feeling of home, the feeling of warmness. We need a mind, an intellect, and a body for that. So if one negates that I am not the body, mind, intellect, which is the one that experiences artha, kama, and dharma, then what need is there for another body after death? Who is there to come back? When the I is not associated mistakenly under the false assumption that it is the body, mind, intellect, when that I has been dissociated from it, how is consciousness now going to need another body? So there's no logic there. Because who's there to enjoy the fruits? It's the body enjoying, and I'm not enjoying the fruits, so why do I need another body if it doesn't interest me? Yeah. So that's why there is no rebirth. Okay, after self-knowledge, one should control the senses, control the mind, after self-knowledge. Control the senses, control the mind, and live a pure life until knowledge is firm. That's a very nice instruction. Not after self-knowledge, go back to usual worldly entanglements, even though there's nothing wrong with that either. It's just even after knowledge, one should control the senses intelligently without overindulging. Control the mind, that is what enters the mind, what experiences come into the mind, and live a pure life until the knowledge is firm. A pure life, sattvic life, that means activities which represent those which support tranquility or serenity of the mind, like meditation, contemplation, hanging out in groups which reflect the same ideas, yeah, until knowledge is firm. That's why most of us in Vedanta, we still choose to continue going, even if knowledge is clear. Because, as I said from the beginning, the senses can take the mind even away from the self for people who practice karma yoga and who see clearly. Out of that reason, one has to live a pure life until knowledge is firm. Yeah. Okay. So now we have come to the end of chapter 2, and we're going to do some summaries of a few key points that we have mentioned so far, because from next week the tone is going to change a little bit, because chapter 2 of the Gita is called Sankhya Yoga, and Sankhya Yoga is the vision of the entire Gita. So everything you've heard so far has been the summary of all 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. From now on, it's going to be more detail about what we have talked about. So the tone changes slightly, but nevertheless, you've gotten the whole vision of the Gita so far. So now, let's go through some points that are worth reiterating to summarize chapter 2. I'm going to go back to the Holy Gita reference guide, and I took a few points that are relatable to what we've been through. Okay, what is the meaning of the word Upanishad? We hear the word Upanishad quite often. What is the meaning of it? It's a word indicating a literature that is to be studied by sitting Shad, and upa means near, and shad sitting. So I'm sitting near to a teacher in spirit of the receptive wanting and surrender. That's the meaning of Upanishad. Okay. 10. Upanishad teaches what we've been through so far, self-knowledge. It's called Brahma Vidya. That's what the purpose of Upanishad is. It's the last section of the Vedas called the Jnana Kanda. It's a very small section. In the Vedas, there's 4 Vedas, and every Veda has 2 or 3 Upanishads at the end, and their purpose is to reveal this knowledge. So they teach the knowledge of Brahman. And the rest of the Vedas, the beginning, called the Karma Kanda, teaches all about Artha, Kama, and Dharma. Only the small section at the end teaches about moksha. And now you say, why is the Vedas so big? Why is this huge 4 volumes of Vedas? Because they appeal to different temperaments for different people. It doesn't mean that you have to read the whole thing, because it doesn't apply to you in that stage of life. So we take parts that are applicable to our life stage and discard the rest. That's how these scriptures work. All right. What is sin? The word sin. Sin is only a mistake committed by an ignorant individual ego against its own divine nature as the eternal self, soul. To act as the body or the mind or the intellect is not to own up to the responsibilities of a man, but to behave under the impulse of an animal nature. So body, mind, and intellect, they all have their own personalities, you could say. The body has a personality of satisfying itself by touch, smell, sight, hearing. That's how the body gets satisfied. If you deprive a baby or a human being from exercising its sight, hearing, smell, it's just going to wither away. It's going to turn ill and die eventually. So that means the body has to get fed senses for it to stay alive. If you just entertain the mind, the feeling, the feeler of thoughts, then, or you deprive that, then there's going to be a sense of numbness. That's a dead person. There's nothing, there's no emotion there. And intellect, if you deprive the intellect, then that's just what? That's just a impulsive animal. That's an instinctually impulsive animal. And all of these body, mind, and intellect have their own personalities. So that means that if we subordinate or subject ourselves to any one of them at the exclusion of the other 2, then that is called sin. Because every one of them has their own desires. So if I say I'm just going to satisfy my body desires, then the body is going to go and indulge in food and, sensual pleasure and so on. That is what? Ignoring the nature of a human being, which is all 4 at the same time: physical, mental, intellectual, and spiritual. So it is to act as the body, or so in other words, I already said this last time, some people can just act one of these personalities and totally ignore the rest, and you can tell easily there's a misbalance there. They're either too intellectual, they're too much in the head, they're too much in the heart, or they're just all about just body stuff. Yeah. All those acts performed and motives by these 3 personalities entertained are called sins that create gross mental impressions and thereby reinforce the walls between us, the person, and our cognition of the divine spark or the self. All those acts performed and motives entertained are called sins. So, in other words, what it's saying is when, as I said, when all of them are individuated, when they're all separately attended to at the expense of the others, that's what we call negligence, ignorance, sin. When they're all included, that's what we call a harmonious human being. The heritage of a human being is to exercise all four. Okay, let's do one more. The Kauravas and the Pandavas. Okay, so from the beginning I said the story of the Gita, and the Kauravas was on the Duryodhana side with Drona, the archer and the teacher of the Pandavas. The Pandavas are the good people, the good side. And the Kauravas represent the negative and of the negative parts of ourselves, the four personalities all fighting for their needs. Physical fighting for its physical, sensual, the mind fighting for its emotions, and the intellect fighting for its intellectual. And the Kauravas is the disbalance of those four personalities in every human individual. And the Pandavas represent divine tendencies. That's why there was a story in the Gita where Krishna asked Dharma Raja, a person called Dharma Raja, who was the wisest in the kingdom. And he said to Dharma Raja, "Go out and find me the most wicked person and come back to me." And Krishna told Duryodhana is the dark side, the ego part of the individual, told Duryodhana, "Go out and find the wisest person." And they both came back and they failed. Dharma Raja could not find a wicked person, and Duryodhana could not find a wise person. Why? Yeah, because there is only you here. Your understanding, your outer world is a reflection of what you know, of your understanding. To Dharma Raja, everyone is wise, everyone is beautiful, everyone is the self. So who is there to be wicked? To Duryodhana, everyone is wicked. So who is there to be wise? Yeah. So that's the difference between Kauravas and the Pandavas. And that's why sometimes even someone who is doing something, they know they're not supposed to be doing it, and they will tell you this is bad. They even know it's not good, but they still do it. They can't help themselves. I actually just watched the documentary about the Colombia. There was some very dangerous drug in Colombia, and they used that to incapacitate the individual, and then they steal all their money. They just put a little bit in their drink or give them to sniff it, and they're gone. And one person decided to go find these mobsters and interview them. Just say, like, why do you do this? Like, what's your motivation? And they were very honest. They said, I started and I know I'm doing all these bad things. I know they're not right. But hey, that's just the way it is. So we all inherently have the Pandavas, the good side in us, and the Kauravas. And the Kauravas, if the Pandavas is not exercised, it's not attended to, it's not supported, then the Kauravas comes out by itself. Yeah. And even sometimes in very short moments we can have a Kauravas moment, and then we go, oh, I'm sorry, I should have not said that. Pandavas comes out. Yeah. Okay, and the next we'll do it next week. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi.